Man, do I love a good haunted house or a corn maze. And if you're one of my friends, you know that if you go through one of those with me, I'm gonna stop and pay attention to all the detail that was given to the props. Some of which you can tell are handmade and are so incredibly fascinating because they've taken something and turned it into something else. The artistry is amazing, and I'm always in love with what people can do with things. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a keg bucket and turn it into a giant witch's cauldron. So, come on, let's hang out and let's get started. Alright, so first things first is we're going to take this keg bucket that I found online. You can find these on Amazon or Home Depot. I'll link them on my website. We're going to take this keg bucket and turn it into a cauldron. First things first we're going to do is get rid of these rope handles. So I'm taking some heavy duty scissors to cut them off and get rid of them. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to mark every 2 inches at the top of the keg bucket. The reason we're doing this is we're going to be placing our cardboard ribs every 2 inches. Next, we're going to create a stencil for our ribs. So we're going to be measuring 16 inches, which is the size of the keg wall, and then creating a curve and creating our stencil. Alright, so we have our stencil built, and it's time to line it up and see how well it fits on the keg bucket. We're going to go to the left and to the right every 2 inches with these stencils. Alright, so I noticed that we have a little bit of overhang, and I wanted a little bit more of a flatter bottom to the cauldron. So we're going to do some trim work to this stencil before we make all of our rib pieces. Alright, now that we have our stencil made, it is now time to trace out and cut out all of our rib pieces. One thing I will say is make sure that you're using new heavy-duty cardboard. You don't want used flimsy cardboard. These ribs are to help create a strong outer body. My suggestion is to get some heavy-duty moving boxes that are new to create your rib pieces. Trust me, it'll make a huge difference. I would also say make a couple of extra ribs. Sometimes things can go wrong or they don't line up right or whatever. So cut out some extra pieces. As you can see, I'm using a Home Depot moving boxes. These turned out to be really great because I got multiple pieces cut out from one box. So definitely check out the Home Depot moving boxes. Alright, now that the tedious task of cutting all these ribs out is over, I also suggest just watching all of my YouTube videos while you do that. It helps pass the time along. We're going to glue the flat edge of the rib here, hot glue it to the keg bucket. You can see I'm doing a fantastic job of this. We're going to glue it to the keg bucket, and then we're going to glue the sides to the left and to the right of them to give it some extra sturdiness to it. Alright, so gluing the sides gets progressively harder as you add more and more ribs, but just get as much glue as you can in there. It doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to be sturdy. The other thing I wanted to mention is you want to leave a little bit of the lip, a little space between the lip of the keg and the rib. The reason is we're going to put the cauldron outer piece on later, and we'll want that extra room underneath. Alright, at this point, once all the ribs were on, it looked fantastic, but I did have to move this project inside as a summer storm was rolling in, so enjoy these few seconds of zen. Alright, so now that we're inside and dry, the next step is to add duct tape to create the outer body now of it. The tip that I give you with this is don't pull too hard on it so that way it pulls the ribs or rips the ribs off. We're just covering it. That's all we're doing. And don't worry about any snarled tape marks or anything like that. We're gonna papier-mâché it next, so it'll smooth it out. So just get it covered. That's the biggest thing. Alright, now we're going to make some homemade papier-mâché glue. This will save you some money on having to buy a bunch of Mod Podge and water it down. Alright, you're going to start with 1 cup of cornstarch mixed with 2 cups of cold water. I've also got on the stove 2 quarts of boiling water that we're going to add to this mixture and mix it all together. Once it's mixed together and mixed thoroughly, you're going to let that cool down and it'll stiffen up a bit so that way we can add newspaper strips to the cauldron, but give it time to cool down and stiffen up a little bit. Okay, the other thing I would say about this mixture is once you make it, use it, and then lose it, because after a couple of days it will start to smell and also develop mold, and nobody wants that. So be sure to use this mixture within a couple of days of making it. Alright, so while this mixture cools down, I went ahead and cut newspaper strips into about 2-inch thick strips that we're going to use to adhere to the cauldron. My tip with getting this onto the cauldron is to spread the mixture onto the cauldron and then place the strips of newspaper on it rather than dip the newspaper strips and place it. You're definitely going to want 3 or 4 layers of newspaper on this cauldron. Anything less than that, it's going to make it less sturdy. So add a layer of newspaper, let it dry, rinse and repeat for 3 or 4 times. You'll get a much stronger outer surface. Okay, now it's time to add the cauldron handles, and I'm going to be using these shower rings, these towel rings as the handles. And what I'm going to do is use the holes on the cauldron as a guideline to make sure that they are evenly spaced on each side. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to measure 5 inches down from the lip of the cauldron to know where to glue them. If you feel like that's too high, you want to move them lower, it's your cauldron. You do what you want. The other thing I would mention about this is make sure that the rings are placed in between the ribs. You don't want them resting on the actual ribs themselves because it will create an uneven surface. You want them to rest in between the ribs. I also use painter's tape to tape off the ring to help hold it in place, while I use liquid nails to glue the ring in place. Alright, and you're going to want to let these rings and the liquid nails dry for about 24 to 48 hours before we do anything else with them or remove the tape. You want to make sure it has a super secure bond to the cauldron. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to add the upper lip of the cauldron using this rubber pipe insulation. I like the rubber pipe insulation more than the foam because it's a little bit smoother and it's a little bit easier to manipulate. It also has these great adhesive strips on the back that'll help keep it in place. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put some more liquid nails on the top of the cauldron top there to help keep it in place. Liquid nails don't usually do well with plastic materials like this, but it's really just to kind of help keep it in place while I maneuver it around. The other thing about this is to remember that's why we kept that upper lip a little bit open, so that way I could tuck this pipe insulation underneath of it. Alright, it is starting to come together really nicely. It's starting to look like a cauldron and no longer like a keg bucket, which is really exciting. Next step is to take my handy dandy chalkboard spray paint and cover this beast in black spray paint, including the upper lip there on the top. Alright, let's mess this cauldron up a bit and give it some gross crusty bits. We're going to mix Mod Podge with steel cut oats, quick oats, and even a little bit of dirt if you have it. And you can use this to create a chunky paste. Chunky paste. This technique is also great for messing up store-bought cauldrons as well. It really gives it a unique detail to it. Also use a paintbrush you don't mind throwing away afterwards, because you're not going to want to save it. A tip is to make sure that the ratio of Mod Podge to your oatmeal is 2 to 1. If you have more oats than glue, it's not going to stick properly. And you just kind of want to create just drips along the top and just cover it. Trust me, it'll look weird when it's waiting for it to dry, but it's going to look fantastic once it all comes together. Alright, off screen I spray painted all the bits, and you can see kind of just gives it some extra texture to it. And then we're going to add some extra color to it using a couple of different acrylic paints to create rust spots and some patina, and just give it some extra color to it so it doesn't look so clean and new, if you will. I'll list the paint colors here on the website and in the description, so you can kind of use the same. I kind of went heavy because generally these cauldrons are going to be under low light or in special haunt lighting, so you want the details to pop a little bit, so go a little bit heavier than you normally would. Alright, I think we have a final product on our hands that I'm pretty proud of. It looks fantastic. It looks no longer like a keg bucket. It looks like a cauldron. You can see a little bit of the ribbing. I don't care. It's homemade. It's fantastic. I love the detail, and I think you're going to have a great time with this, and so will your party guests or your haunt guests. So thanks for hanging out, and until next time, stay pretty and Halloween on.